John Robinson, touchdown Atlanta. Intercepted A.J. Terrell. Touchdown Atlanta. Drake London. Here's a pressure. Jones goes down. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the game, Cadell. Oh, Darnell Mooney inside the 10. Oh, and it's intercepted. Kane Ellis the pick. Striding out, Jesse. Touchdown Atlanta. No chance. Oh my gosh. Oh my heavens.
All right, it is rivalry week in the NFL for the Falcons and the Saints. The Falcons are heading to New Orleans today for week 12 of the NFL season. Saints are coming off of a bye, and the Falcons are looking for their first win since week 6. Thank you guys for joining us today for the Falcons pregame show presented by Ticketmaster Studios. Vismor, Derek, Rackley, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right into it. Obviously, as many of you know, Michael Penix was placed on the injured reserve list earlier in the week due to a left knee injury that he sustained last Sunday against the Carolina Panthers. After a second opinion and further results, it has come to a conclusion that he will need season-ending surgery on that knee. Rack, we knew this coming into the draft a couple of years ago, taking Michael Penix. That was the bigger conversation about him coming into that draft. Of he gets hurt a lot, and it's all about the knees for Michael Penix. I think he sustained 4 ACL injuries during his time in college. You see what happened on Sunday, and I think even Michael knew what happened to himself on Sunday after that singular play. You can see him walking off the field here. What are your immediate thoughts about Michael Penix and what happened to him on Sunday?
Well, I hate it for him because as I was in the stadium, I'm always in one of the end zones as I'm doing work for the stadium crew during the games, and he immediately takes his helmet off and it kind of starts rolling, or maybe throws it a little bit behind him. And I kind of thought the same thing you did, Taylor. It was almost like, oh gosh, it's almost like he knew, right? He's like, I've felt this before. I've been here before. And I fortunately never had a knee injury. So if it would have happened to me, I wouldn't have known, right? You probably knew that something didn't feel right. Something was painful. Something potentially popped. I don't know what the case is. But it was almost like Michael knew because he's been there before. So you hate it for him. Unfortunately, he's on the way to his recovery now, and you wish the best for him to come back. Now let's rewind a little bit and talk about the draft, because as you mentioned, Falcons had signed Kirk Cousins at free agency, and then they drafted Michael Penix. And Raheem Morris, in his press conference right afterwards, made the comment to the extent of quarterback is not going to be an issue for us in the near term, right? Because they signed Kirk and they drafted a first-round quarterback. And I think more of it was because he was anticipating more wins, and we weren't going to have an opportunity to be in that selection, right, of the draft, in the top 10 to get a quarterback. But now it's almost somewhat genius if you want to kind of twist things around a little bit, because now you've got an extremely accomplished veteran backup quarterback that now steps back into the starting role in Kirk Cousins, which a lot of people would say that the start last year was really good. Like, Kirk got off to a really good start last year, but then he just kind of fell into a rut with the interceptions, which ultimately led to the change of Michael Penix getting the start towards the end of the season. So with that being said, it's not like you have to teach a young guy that just came into your organization 3 weeks ago. He's got to get up to speed quickly on the offense. Maybe he doesn't have any idea of how the terminology works. And guess what? Now you got to start, and we need you to win football games for us.
Right.
It's not the case with Kirk Cousins. He knows the offense. He knows all the players. He knows their tendencies. He's worked with them. He's practiced with them. He knows Zach Robinson. He knows where he's likely going to go with play calls. And now it's just up to him to go out there and prove to himself, to his teammates, to the organization, and ultimately the National Football League, that he's still got something left in the tank. And that's what he's got for this game and the rest of the season.
Yeah, Penix left the game on Sunday in the third quarter with 13 of 16 with 175 yards. Kirk Cousins would come in for the remainder of that game, finishing 16 for 14 with 48 yards. We're going to talk a little bit more about his ability moving forward and what we saw from him in the latter part of last season. But before we get to that, Raheem Morris was asked about his confidence in this Kirk Cousins, and as his backup quarterback, if you will, what his confidence is for him going into the rest of the season.
You know, Allison, I just think, he started the season for us last year, didn't start off as well, right? Remember, we played Pittsburgh, kind of struggled a little bit. We were able to go out there and be competitive. Once he got rolling, we were able to get some really good games off to one of the career best games that we had in Atlanta history. So, we just got to find a way to get him back to those moments and those things, and he's got to find his way to be able to do those things as well, which I feel really good about. Just watching him in practice and watching him in training camp and watching him go through his process over the last couple of months. I feel like he'll be able to go out there and execute and do some things for us really well. he doesn't provide us confidence in that way that he'll be able to do those things for us.
Does it help in a time like this having like a veteran quarterback like Kirk Cousins as your backup and coming in and starting?
There's 100% no doubt about that. You know, it was the whole purpose of, you know, I know it was a whole rush to, you know, move on and do all these other different things, but you're talking about a great human. You're talking about a guy you know can play, a guy that you got a lot of belief in, a guy that led us to a 6-3 record last year, and will be asked to he'll be called upon again.
All right, so like we mentioned before, Penix will be placed on injured reserve. Kirk Cousins will now be the first string quarterback. Easton Stick was signed from the practice squad. He will be the backup quarterback moving forward. And Kyle Trask, who was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, has been signed to the practice squad as the P squad quarterback. But like Raheem Morris was saying in that shot right there, you heard him saying, or the interviewer asked him, does this give you kind of a reprieve in a way, knowing that having a veteran quarterback be your backup? And he said, of course. He started 6-3, and that's a great point. Raheem Morris did mention that Kirk Cousins started 6-3 for this Falcons team, but what he didn't mention was those last 4 games that Kirk Cousins played, last 5 games, if you will, losing 4 and then winning his last start with the Raiders down in Las Vegas. Knowing what you know now about Kirk Cousins and how that season ended for him, what is your confidence level in Kirk Cousins moving forward with this team?
Yeah, I would say it's still, I've got some questions, if you will, just because the little bit of the role that he's played this year has not necessarily looked dynamite.
Yeah.
And then the way that things finished last year, right? So sometimes you're looking for, okay, what did you see to where it gives you confidence that he's going to go out and he's going to have a great start? He's going to start 17-20 in this game. And I just don't know if I have that feel from the resume that we've recently seen, okay? However, we do know that there was times that were really good last year, and he was battling some injuries. Like some of this stuff came out. Obviously, he came into the season with the Achilles, and then he was dealing with some other things that potentially ended up kind of inhibiting what he was able to do throwing the football. Now we know that things are going to look completely different, right? Kirk Cousins has got a history of being sacked. He's not a mobile quarterback. He was sacked 28 times last year. Even if you go back to his years with Minnesota when he was really good, and you look at the seasons, Taylor, where he played 14, 15, 16 games, right? You look at a full resume of a season, he was sacked quite a bit. Like that's kind of his thing. He's not a mobile quarterback. If the pocket collapses around him, if he doesn't get rid of the football, unfortunately, he's going to have to eat it. So you realize that you're going to have to give up some of that. You may have to swallow a couple more sacks this week, but then you have a veteran quarterback that's seen a lot of things, and you just trust that he can get back, channel some of those old school days, if you will, and use anticipation, use timing to his benefit, and be able to move the football down the field through the air. This cannot be a game, Taylor, where they expect him to throw it 40 times, throw the ball for 300-plus yards. They need this running game to show up and be a compliment for him.
Well, we'll talk about the running game here in just a second, but you mentioned I don't think anyone's going to ask him to throw it 40 times if you had all the wide receivers that you have on this roster. But now, coming out, Drake London will be inactive today for today's game. That's a huge miss for the Falcons, right? And this pass-catching offense, if you will. Knowing now that you don't have Drake, he's a top target to get the ball to throughout the season so far this year. He's 5th in the NFL in receiving yards. I mean, he's one of the more dynamic players that the Falcons have on this team. Who are you looking towards today to make a moment for themselves today against the Saints?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge miss without having Drake London. What he's showed, especially recently, but you could say throughout the course of his career, is that this guy's a matchup nightmare. Like, I think a lot of defensive back, corners, safeties, they don't like to match up against him because of his physicality and because of his, I would just call it his want to, right? His competitiveness. Like, he wants the football. If it's up in the air, the decision in Drake London's mind is this ball is mine, and you're just lucky to be on the same field with me, okay? But I'm going to get this football. And so you don't have that alpha dog on the field this weekend. So what is it going to look like? Well, you got to have a guy like Darnell Mooney step up, right? And I think a lot of people have been waiting. Like, when is this going to happen? Like, we need Darnell Mooney to step up. It was really good last year at times with Kirk Cousins. You need Darnell Mooney to step up. You need Kyle Pitts to step up. You need maybe some change up from some formations and get Bijan Robinson more involved in the passing game. I say more involved. He's been quite involved in this passing game, but even more so because of how reliable and dependable he is when you get the ball in his hands in the passing game. To me, these are the areas where guys are going to have to step up. They're going to have to play better than they've been playing this season. Let's call a spade, right? Can't drop the ball.
Right.
The ball's there, you got to make a catch.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can sit here and make excuses all you want. And I've told people till blue in the face that excuses get you cut or they lose games.
Yeah.
You got to catch the ball.
Right.
Now, Kirk's got to put it there. Offensive line's got to protect, but once the ball is there, got to catch the ball and make plays today.
Yeah, well, I mean, you bring up Mooney, and I think that's kind of a name that everyone has been waiting for. We're in week 12. There's no more waiting. It's do or die at this point. You've got to show up. You've got to make the plays. You've got to make those catches. But something that I thought about when we heard the news about Kirk Cousins starting, we more so heard the news of Drake London not playing today, is I went back and I looked at all the numbers from last year, and I won't get into all of it, but you did see this real connection that Kirk had with Darnell Mooney. I remember the first time that we sat down with Darnell when he first got here after free agency. He said, I waited until I knew that Kirk Cousins was coming here to play with him because I played against him when I was with the Bears. I played against that guy all the time. And I knew what kind of talent he had, and I wanted to work with him. You saw that real connection that they had last year. What excites you about the potential that they could have today moving forward?
Yeah, like maybe it's a sense of comfort for Darnell Mooney, right? Because he can go back to some of those experiences from last year and say, gosh, we had some really good moments, and that was one of my better seasons in 2024 was with Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position because of the chemistry that they built together. So that's what you hope for. But at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot of hoping that helps you get into win columns, right? And so it's just, you got to create separation, you got to get the ball there, and you got to catch it. Like, I don't want to sit here and try to go into some like whole monologue here about what has to happen. Sometimes it's just simple. Like, yes, scheme, play calling has to be there, but it's protecting, it's making good throws, and it's catching the ball. And sometimes it's not going to be the best throw, right? How many times have we seen Drake London go make an even better catch on maybe a not so great throw?
Right.
We've seen it.
Yeah.
It's what you have to do in the National Football League. You got to make contested catches. So that's one part, but you also got to make the easy ones, the layups, right? The little layups, the fast break where nobody is on you and it's an easy basket, like those catches have to be made in this game.
Yeah, you mentioned that ability to create separation. Someone else that can create separation is Casey Washington. He will be inactive today as well. You can see that this pass catching, this wide receiver room is dwindling down little by little as we keep going on. Kind of because of that week 5 bye, if you will. I don't want to like place blame on a week 5 bye, but that you kind of start to see all these injuries start to pile up on top of each other. Casey Washington will be out. Drake London will be out. Who are some other wide receivers that we could be looking at today?
Well, this is kind of where you look at the depth chart and guys kind of slide up a little bit, right? So we've seen David Sills throughout the course of the season kind of in that wide receiver 3 role, and that's still going to be kind of his role in this game, but maybe he decides to step up a little bit and make a couple of catches in this game. How about Kadarius Hodge? Anybody remember the game against Tampa last year where Drake London ended up getting hurt? And who was it that made the catch in overtime that basically ended up icing the victory for the Atlanta Falcons? Is Kadarius Hodge. Now, he's been a special teams ace. That's been his role on this team. You can see the numbers as far as wide receiver, as far as catches this year, not necessarily going to blow you away. But I do remember, Taylor, last year when Atlanta went down to New Orleans, their top 2 wide receivers were out. And they had some other guys that stepped up and not only stepped up, but caught the ball and got into the end zone, right? So it happens, and it happens all across the National Football League, but it's up to these 2 guys that they're going to look at this opportunity, and they're not going to be nervous, they're not going to be hesitant, they're going to go play fast, they're going to play confident, just like Darnell Mooney. They're going to get open, and they're going to make catches. That's what has to happen.
Well, and what I know about these 2 guys as well is that they have been in the Kadarius Hodge has been in the Falcons locker room for a while now, since 2022, but they've also been in the league for a long time, and they've kind of created this like repertoire for themselves in a way. I remember when David Sills got here during camp, everyone in the wide receiver room was excited to have David Sills, especially Drake London, and I even know that some of the coaches really speak very highly of David Sills, and that plays well for the quarterbacks. If the entire wide receiver room likes you and the coaches like you, maybe I'll give you a couple opportunities down the line as well. But just when you thought that the injuries were done, there was news that came down the pipeline for the Falcons on Saturday. Billy Bowman Jr. was placed on IR due to an Achilles injury that he sustained during walkthrough. Zach Harrison also placed on IR this week. He's been inactive the last couple of weeks as well. So knowing this now, I mean, look at this little graphic that they have put on the screen. So many people have been placed on IR recently, bigger names for this team. as well with Michael, Caleb McGarry, Billy Bowman Jr., Zach Harrison, Clark Phillips, and then D'Angelo Malone as well. All these guys starting at some point throughout the season, with the exception of Caleb McGarry, who was placed on IR during training camp. Knowing what we know, how big of a miss is Billy Bowman and even Zach Harrison to this defense today?
Yeah, so here's what I'll say. Because when you talk about injured reserve and guys getting hurt around the National Football League, it happens everywhere. Like every single roster could probably pull up a graphic similar to that and say, gosh, these are some really important players that we are missing the services of, right? Happens all across the league. And it's one thing that you can't control, and it's one thing that you can look at a team on paper to start the season and say, gosh, this looks like a team that could win a lot of football games, but you never know that wild card that is called health, right? And it's starting to jump up and bite Atlanta right now. You think about the two guys you just talked about. Billy Bowman was drafted. He won the nickel position coming out of camp, and he was really a consistent force early on in the season. Then he gets banged up, misses a few games. They have to shuffle some things around the defensive backfield. Guess what? Everybody has to do it. Zach Harrison, he goes on IR. What's been his significance? Well, at the time, there was a time this year where he was leading the team in sacks. If there's one good thing that I can take away from Zach Harrison being hurt, and it's not a good thing about him being hurt, it's the fact that this pass rush has kind of been a collective effort all season long. It's not like you had a guy like Zach Harrison who's got 9.5, 11.5 sacks, and then the rest of your team had like 1s and 2s. You've got a lot of guys on this pass rush that have got 3, 4, and 5 sacks throughout the season, and so it's like, okay, well, we still got Arnold Ebiketie. We still got Leonard Floyd if he ends up playing. We still got Jalen Walker. We still got James Pierce. Like, Caden Ellis, we know can get after the passer.
Right.
There's a lot of people that can do it. It's not like you're missing out on a guy that's been a 4-time Pro Bowler, one of the best in the National Football.
Right.
Hey, listen, Zach Harrison's had a great year.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to still be a big miss, but it's not like he has been the only guy that's been getting after the quarterback.
Yeah, all right, well, let's go ahead and transition on to this Saints matchup. I know we talked about all the injuries and guys that won't be playing, but let's kind of transition now to guys that will be playing and things that have happened earlier in the week. Obviously, as you know, the Falcons are looking for their first win since week 6, so things can seem a little bleak for the fans right now. What good can be happening right now for the fans? But what's been so fun is watching these Falcons give back to their community and even make a couple wishes come true for kids along the way.
What up, dude? How you doing, man?
Good, how are you?
Good, bro. Good?
Mm-hmm.
They give you enough gear yet, man?
Yeah.
You get Bijan's jersey signed?
Like,
Oh, he's right there. You gotta sign that
My
thing.
dog. Good, brother?
Sweet, dog.
thank
What's your
you.
name, man?
Jaden.
Jaden, it's nice to meet you, man. My name's
Nice to
Kaden.
meet you.
Jaden was diagnosed about 3 years ago with leukemia.
How you been, boy?
Good to see you.
After everything they go through with the chemo and everything, it's just getting to where they are and just being able to meet their hero or somebody they look up to. It helps in the process of the healing.
My dog. You know, I was a kid once too, and if I had the opportunity to see my favorite player, like I would want to go and, you know, have a conversation with him. You know, I feel it's our job to just lead him in the right direction. Just know that he has me as a friend, always, and you know, it was cool. Like his last name is Robinson too, so I was like, bro, like you just inherited a cousin right here. I'm about to say it to my cousin.
Jaden will be at the game tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah. You got in the sideline? Or like
He doesn't know it yet, but
I mean, even just talking to his family, that was their first football game ever. So I asked him, I was like, ever? And he was like, yeah, ever. For him to battle through it, and for him to just have God so like strong in his life, and to come out on the other side, like, you know, that's real life we're talking about. And you know, for him to, you know, enjoy a moment that he might have not have thought he could have.
And with everything that's going on, it makes them feel good and happy, and that's hard when they're going through all this awful disease.
What does
it say?
To my cousin, bro, happy to meet you.
Oh, to meet you and be a part of your journey. God is so good, bro.
Thank you.
I can't even explain it, to be honest with you. It's just seeing him that happy. You know, I still go back and think about the beginning of the journey, right? And how he was and how much he has grown. Just having his wish that he wanted come true. it's just, I don't know, it's a hard feeling to express.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
See you guys.
You wearing our red paint?
Yep.
Thanks, Bijan.
Just take your notes.
You play video games?
Yeah.
What?
2K, Madden.
Oh, we can crossplay.
That just happened. This is the best day ever.
First of all, kudos to our production team putting that together. I saw it earlier this week and I thought it was just outstanding. I said, is there a way that we can get that in the show? Because I was in the stadium on Sunday, and if you're a Falcons fan and you are watching, you're in the stadium, you're watching on TV, you're listening on the radio, and you're frustrated because they're losing games, you think about that type of a moment, Taylor. You think about how one player is like changing the life of some young man, and it's just like, wow, this is what the power of the National Football League can be sometimes. And yes, we all want to see wins. We want to see more W's in the win column. We want to see this organization going into the postseason. But sometimes you got to remember it's bigger than that. Yeah. And that was an awesome piece. I loved it.
Yeah, it was really fun watching Jaden. And there was also another special guest in the building earlier this week because it's My Cause, My Cleats week as well. And I'm sure we'll show you some cool cleats. But it's not just about the coolness of the cleats and painting your cleats all cool and whatever. It's also the stories that happen. We had Jelani come in from Children's Healthcare of America, or of Atlanta, excuse me, come in. And both of these guys, the one from Make-A-Wish, Jaden from Make-A-Wish, and then Jelani from Children's Healthcare. They both are struggling and working through leukemia. And I think what's so great about these moments in the NFL, both with Make-A-Wish and with My Cause, My Cleats, and just the community outreach, is that with those two kids in particular, so much of their parents' memories with their children are in hospital rooms. Mm-hmm. And you're watching your child grow up in a hospital room. So getting an opportunity as a parent to see your child make a memory, and for you as a family to make a memory that's not in a hospital room, is so awesome. And it was so fun to see these kids kind of come to life. And, you know, it's awesome. I mean, we're in buildings every single day with these players, and they're just people to us, but to other people outside of the building, they're real heroes. And
exactly.
So it's been really fun to watch. And I know, like you mentioned, the W's have not been there for this team, but the community, I think that's something that's so amazing about the Falcons and Arthur Blank as an owner, is that the community does not stop, and the outreach does not stop, even if the wins are not showing up on the column. Yeah, absolutely. This My Cause, My Cleats initiative has been extremely special for me too, because this was not going on when I was playing, right? This has only been going on for about 10 years. I've been retired from the game for much longer than that. And so I only got a chance to kind of watch these guys, a little bit of jealousy, if you will, like, gosh, it would have been cool if I could have done that when I was playing. But then the NFL opened it up to broadcasters. They opened it up to network level broadcasters to get in. Obviously, we're not wearing cleats when we are calling games or we are working in the studio. Sure. But this is the third year that I've actually got a chance to, and I'm going to throw them up here. I'm going to try not to fall. Okay. Throw it up. So as you can see here, I've got my own My Cause, My sneakers. Yes. Okay. And this year I'm supporting a local charity in Beaufort, Georgia that's called Jambos. You can't see it on that side of the shoe, and I'm not going to flip it around because we're going to end up on the back of my head. But this was really cool. I get contacted back in like September, and the NFL pairs you up with a designer. And then I got the designer involved with the head of the charity that I am supporting, and they kind of worked out the design. And I had not seen them until I opened the box on Thursday. Yeah. That was the first time I saw it. So but it's cool. Very cool. Well, you mentioned it was Jambos. Tell us a little bit about the community and the outreach that they do and what their mission absolutely. Is. So it was started by a good friend of ours. Okay. Actually, I tell people this, and the girl that runs it, Rebecca Black's probably going to disagree with me, but my wife was the one that ultimately encouraged her. She's like, I've got this vision. This is what I wanted to do. And my wife said, then you should go do it. Like, if this is your passion, go make it happen. So what it is, Jambos is a charity that provides pajamas to kids that are experiencing foster care. So if there's one thing that a young kid that has to go through that experience does not have to worry about, it's a comfortable set of pajamas to go to sleep in. And so she started this thing with a vision, and it started kind of in the local community, and then it's grown throughout Georgia, and now this thing has exploded. They've raised over $2 million. She had a meeting with Caden Ellis and his wife this week. They're going to try to help pitch in and grow the reach of it. And so I'm just kind of doing what I can to help get the word out there more and see if we can
get this to spread even more and more and more.
Yeah, well, pajamas are so helpful because sleep is so important, especially to young children. So if you or someone that you know wants to give back to their community, Jambo's is in Buford, and you can give back to them on your own accord. Coaches were also given the opportunity to design some Air Force Ones, I think, is what you're wearing,
yep.
right? I don't know sneakers like that. But the coaches were allowed to do that as well, so they will be wearing their sneakers on the sidelines today, so make sure to check out everyone's feet as they play the Saints today. So let's go ahead and talk about this matchup. As we know, this is a contentious rivalry between the two. It's tied right down the middle, 56-56. They played 113 times, if my math is correct. This is one of the better rivalries in the NFL. No matter how great the NFC South is or how not so great the NFC South is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you line up in the NFL. This is one of the better rivalries. You've been a part of it. Why is it so special?
Yeah, it's one of those where I didn't really know a whole lot about it until I came into the league. I grew up and I played my college football in the North and the Midwest at Minnesota. And then you come down and you're just like happy to get a chance to play in the National Football League. And then as this game gets a little bit closer, you start hearing the fans, you start hearing the players that have been on the team talk about this rivalry and how much distaste there is for each organization. And then you actually go through it and you see the chippiness, you see the emotion, you see the trash talking that goes on in this matchup, and it's just more elevated. And I think no matter what part of the country you live in, I know a lot of people are here in the Southeast, like, you know, college football rivalries, so you know about Georgia and Auburn and Alabama and Auburn and whatever your rivalry might be. But in the National Football League, it's a little bit different. But this is one of those ones where the teams just generally don't like each other. Yes, you always say throw the records out the window, but this is the case. Like, they want this victory more than anything else. You got 2-8 against 3-7, and they want to hand the other team a loss more than anything else this season.
Well, the Saints are coming off of a bye. Falcons, like I've mentioned, I think 3 times now, looking for their first win since week 6. You mentioned it when we were talking about Kirk Cousins, that they're not going to ask him to throw 40 times down the field. They are going to ask this run game to do a lot, and who better to ask than Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. You've seen these two work together for the past 3 seasons now, and what a show it has been from each of them. Tyler Algier having 1,000 rushing yards his rookie year, and then Bijan Robinson obviously doing Bijan Robinson things. What is needed out of this run game today to ensure a win?
Well, they're definitely going to have to produce, and the reason why I say that is we saw earlier on in this season, like Bijan Robinson in this running game kind of just marching through everybody, right? And then part of this losing streak that Atlanta has been on is defenses, guess what they're doing? They're watching tape. And they're finding the best ways to slow down this guy that wears number 7 on his jersey because he is extremely dynamic and electric. And they're like, okay, how do we minimize his opportunities to make somebody on our defense look silly? Well, you got to bottle them up at the line of scrimmage. So that's why they've started to seeing a lot of run blitzes, adding an extra player in the box, forcing Atlanta to be a passing team because they know that if Bijan Robinson ends up getting out on the perimeter, bad things are going to happen. So it's been a little bit of a struggle as of late after dominating early in the season. Now, if I'm Zach Robinson and I have very little play calling experience, actually women's, girls, middle school flag football, we've won the championship a few times.
Okay,
though.
come
Just
on,
saying,
Coach.
Okay, but I would have both of these guys on the field a lot today. Because Bijan Robinson has to effectively be, I'm going to call it your number 2 wide receiver. If not, maybe you're 1.
Yeah.
Okay? And so there's going to be opportunities where he's going to have to play out of the slot more, but then you have to make the decision from a defensive standpoint. If you got Tyler Algier in the backfield and you got Bijan Robinson also playing the slot, like, how are we going to attack this from a personnel standpoint? Are we playing 3 linebackers or are we playing nickel? All right, if we're playing nickel, then Atlanta needs to be able to run the football. And they need to use Bijan Robinson sometimes as a decoy, and then obviously they need to get him his touches and let him affect the game. But I think that this is a week with London being out, with Michael Penix being out, that you got to put both of these guys on the field. So hopefully their conditioning is good. Now, again, I don't know if this is going to happen. This is just what I would do, but I would have both these guys on the field quite a bit today.
Yeah, I mean, I think over the course of the season that we've seen games without Drake London, and obviously with the dismissal of Ray McLeod, you're kind of missing that 3rd wide receiver. And what Zach Harrison and this offense has done is they've put a lot of 2 tight end sets in, a lot of 2 or running back sets in, a lot of 22 or 21, whatever it might be. You're seeing a lot more of using 2 of those 2 positions, oftentimes way more. Why is that? Obviously, Charlie Warner is more of a blocking tight end. Kyle is more of a pass catching tight end. But then why would you have 2 two tight ends and two running backs, in the backfield working for this offense.
Yeah, again, it's just making a defense have to make a decision on how are you going to adjust to personnel, right? So 22 personnel is generally where you're taking defensive backs off the field, you're bringing in an extra linebacker, you may be bringing in an extra defensive lineman or a safety, right? Because you're trying to match up. You're thinking this is a run-heavy formation, especially on short yardage and goal line situations, but sometimes you do this out in the open field, and then you decide as an offensive play caller are we going to use this as a decoy and we're going to throw off of it because we do have Kyle Pitts, runs like a wide receiver, do have Bijan Robinson, runs like a wide receiver, but yet you still have a tight end in Werner, you still have a running back at Algier that's there, right? So they can make it look like a run formation, but that's where you have to get creative from a scheme standpoint. And are you going to throw the ball out of that formation, or you do have a way to load up? And what I mean load up is like you got both tight ends on the field and they're maybe flanking each side of the formation, and you see a weakness on tape that maybe they don't play the run that well on that side of the formation, then you just try to pound away at them and see if you can get 4, 5, and 6 in the running game, stay on schedule. That's also a really good recipe to win games.
Yeah, let's talk about the defenders on this New Orleans team that are going to try to stop and try to figure out what this Falcons offense is doing. Who are some names that people should be aware of today?
Well, they got a number of really good defensive players. You're seeing Chase Young on this graphic here. Chase Young has obviously been one of the better pass rushers in the National Football League. Not necessarily having a dominant year this year, but he's one of, I would call it 5 or 6 really talented defenders. I feel like this defense starts with 2 people. It starts with Demario Davis, who's their leading tackler, the linebacker position. He's their alpha dog. He's going to talk a lot of mess in this game, and he's probably going to talk even more because it's a rivalry matchup and they're playing against the Falcons. That's just the type of player that he is. But 91 tackles. He doesn't have any sacks this year, 5 tackles for loss. And then Cam Jordan. And Cam Jordan is very vocal as well. And he's been talking all week. He's been telling the rest of the players on the New Orleans Saints roster, especially the new ones, how much distaste that he has for this organization. I went back and looked, Taylor. Cam Jordan, obviously, very lengthy career with the New Orleans Saints. He's played 28 games against the Atlanta Falcons, obviously twice a year that they're playing as a divisional opponent. He's got 24 career sacks in 28 games against the Atlanta Falcons. Do you think there's somebody that kind of has a little bit extra juice in this game? So those are the 2 that I would pick out, but you also got Pete Werner, Carl Granderson, really good defensive players as well. Werner's that second leading tackler that plays next to Demario Davis, and then Granderson's actually leading the team in sacks this year at 4.5 sacks. Those are the 4 guys that I think cause the most havoc on the defensive side for New Orleans.
Yeah, all right, let's go ahead and switch over to New Orleans offense. As so many people know in the NFL, Kellen Moore, in his first year as a head coach, he is an offensive-minded head coach, came from the Philadelphia Eagles after winning a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts, but kind of a different quarterback room that he's working with this year. Obviously, Spencer Rattler started the season after Derek Carr retired from the league. Spencer Rattler would start the season with the Saints, and now Tyler Shuck is starting. He started the last 2 games for the Saints. Shuck is a guy that has kind of ridden under the radar, I think, since the draft, I think, too. I think when he was drafted, a lot of people were thinking, who is this guy? 2nd rounder out of Louisville. What do we know about Tyler Shuck so far?
Yeah, this is one of those deals where it's like, oh gosh, New Orleans turning to a rookie quarterback. Like they've kind of like punted on the season and they're turning the page. But you don't realize that, like, they spent a 2nd-round pick on him. Like, he was drafted ahead of Dylan Gabriel. He was drafted ahead of Jalen Milroe. He was drafted ahead of Shedeur Sanders. And so, obviously, this organization has a lot of confidence in what he brings to the table. He is a taller, pocket-style passer, very minimal experience, as you're seeing 4 games played this year. But last year with Louisville, 23 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions, so he was very smart with the football a year ago. Obviously, things are a whole lot different when you get into the National Football League. New Orleans is just trying to find somebody that can consistently help them get the ball down the field. And so Tyler Shuck is that next guy that they're trying to see, does this guy have enough to be the quarterback of the future for us? So I think it's an opportunity for Atlanta to try to confuse him a little bit. Use some scheme, use some looks from Jeff Ulbrich, whether it's twists up front, whether it's using Jesse Bates and how much experience he has at that safety position to kind of lure him into making a bad decision. stealing a possession away from the defensive side of the ball when you have a rookie quarterback going against you.
Yeah, you mentioned all about luring a rookie quarterback into making bad decisions, and I think that really starts with the defensive front for this Falcons defense. Obviously, like we mentioned in the beginning of the show, Zach Harrison was placed on IR. Leonard Floyd has been dealing with some injury, but you've still got Jalen Walker, you've got James Pierce Jr., you've got David Onyemata in the center there. You also have Caden Ellis, and then, I know this was supposed to be later in the show, guys, sorry to the people upstairs, but Divine Diablo will be making his return to the Falcons 53-man roster. He will be active today. This is huge news for this Falcons defense moving forward, starting today, and we'll get into the rest of the pass catchers for New Orleans in just a second. But what is Divine's impact for this defense, and how will he help lure Shuck into making some bad decisions today?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how important he has been to this defense ever since he's been out, ever since he's been away. And this graphic kind of just really illustrates what we're talking about, is how good this defense was the first, call it 7 weeks of the season. Look at those numbers: total defense, passing yards allowed, scoring defense, and then look at the difference since he has been out of the lineup. Still been able to get after the quarterback, but all of those numbers have gone up. And it's because you don't have this playmaking linebacker that has got the physicality, and he's got enough size to him to play that linebacker position, but he plays it like a safety, right? He can run, he can cover guys out of the backfield. Well, what does that do? That helps you in pass coverage, potentially knocking down more passes, or because of his athleticism and speed, he's keeping closer than maybe other people cannot. And what does that do? That pulls a quarterback off of that player. Whereas maybe that check down to Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor, if he's out of the lineup, it's more open. And so they're dropping it off to him, and now these guys are turning upfield to get a first down. So it'll be interesting to see what his impact is coming back. I saw some images earlier this week that he had a big wrap on it. I don't know what the status will be this week, but he's playing. They have pulled the injury designation off of him. So not only was he taken off of IR, he's going into the game without an injury designation. They said he is good to go.
I mean, we were talking before the show started. It's like one of the crazier, in a good way, crazier ways, like things that we've really seen of, like, you're coming off of IR, you had to go on IR for an arm injury. We don't know what was the actual injury in your arm. Had to go onto IR for that, and then all of a sudden you're back, and you have 21 days. You have a 21-day window, and they were like, no, you're good to go. You're good to go. But something that I was thinking about earlier this weekend as I was preparing for this show was I saw Nate Landman, who was on the team last year. He was extended for the Rams. Congratulations to him on that extension. But I was thinking about how Divine is a different linebacker than Nate Landman.
Yeah.
In so many ways, but I think Landman and Ellis, they worked well together, but they were similar to the point of they were cannibalizing each other in what they were really great at. And I think with Divine, you're seeing a different prototype of linebacker that allows Caden Ellis to go out and do the things that he loves to do. He loves to play on the line, he loves to play off the ball, but he loves to rush the passer. He likes to get in the quarterback's face. And I think with Nate Landman last year, you saw that they had similar styles of play, and they were cannibalizing each other of ability and of performance last year. With Divine now back, it allows Caden Ellis ability to do things that he's really great at and be full all go, no stops. Same with Divine, and dropping back as well, playing more of that safety-ish position, which he has played in the past with safety.
Yeah, I mean, you give Caden Ellis the freedom to go play off the edge, and then you feel confident with the guy that's playing off the ball, right?
Yeah.
That he can kind of patrol things like your field general on defense, and that's what Divine Diablo has been able to do earlier this season when he was in the lineup. So really excited to see what he brings today against New Orleans, because obviously we talked a lot about the offense and the people that are not going to be playing in this game. Well, the defense can have just as big of an impact by how well they play against New Orleans, a team that has been struggling. Like, just keep points off the board, and you can keep this thing close and get into the fourth quarter. Then you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we mentioned Caden Ellis, and I do want to mention this because he does love setting the edge. He loves coming off the edge. He loves sacking the quarterback. This Falcons pass rush so far this season, walking into week 12, they have more sacks on the season than they had all season last year. I mean, this has been something that Jeff Ulbrich, when he first came in, said, we are going to fix the pass rush. And did they fix the pass rush? It's kind of come to life recently. What have you seen from this pass rush as they go into week 12 taking on the Saints?
Yeah, I think a number of things. I think we're seeing, let's start with our two rookies because they've been a big difference maker, is that they're getting more comfortable. They're starting to learn the nuances of rushing the passer in the National Football League versus how that looked in college, right? Because There's times when you run up against an offensive tackle in the NFL, and if you don't come with the right technique, like you're just going to get locked down.
Yeah.
And you're going to all of a sudden realize that, well, in college, I used to be able to get off of this block. And now, like, this guy's putting his hands on me and I'm not going anywhere, right? So then they have to pivot. Like, they got to find out which moves did not work in college, and they got to learn some new ones potentially from the guys that have been around, the Leonard Floyds. It's the reason why he was brought to this organization. Help mentor these young guys and teach them the nuances of rushing the passer in the National Football League. So we've started to see that as of late with Jalen Walker, his ability to get after the quarterback, knock the football loose. But then we also see guys like Brandon Dorlus. I mean, he's had a career year for him, continuing to get after the quarterback. We talked earlier about Zach Harrison. Unfortunately, he goes on IR. He stepped his level of play up, right? And you've got other complementary pieces around him that have been able to, we saw Billy Bowman. He got hurt. He's out. He had a sack last week, right? So complementary pieces, everybody working together, but I think it's getting confidence, especially with these rookies as the season has come on.
I mean, you can see in that lower third right there, 18 sacks in the last 3 games. And I actually had the opportunity to sit down with Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. and I asked them, is there a sense of healthy competition having both of you guys on either edge every other or every snap, every down in games? And James actually said, no, I don't think it's like competition if I want the first sack, I want the first sack. When I look over and I see 11, or he looks over and he sees 27, we get off the ball faster. We rush the passer more aggressively. Having someone in line with you that you know exactly what they want to do and you know exactly what they want to do helps you be better because you want to do as good as they're doing. And I think that Jalen and James are 2 guys that set the standard for each other really well.
Yeah, I think both of these guys, they were stars of their college teams and they were constantly in the spotlight because they were constantly making plays. Yeah. And earlier in the season, it was probably a little bit of a challenge for him, right? To kind of figure out how do I make plays, like feeling the pressure. I'm a first-round draft pick. Like they're expecting me to do these things on the defense. And now probably they're just breathing a little bit more, right? You always hear that phrase like the game starts to slow down a little bit, but now they're starting to get after the quarterback. And I think it's healthy for this defense that they do have that competition and that depth at the pass rushing spot.
Yeah, all right, before we transition to our next topic, I do want to mention, because we talked about Shuck, some people that he's going to throw to. Because Chris Olave is obviously one of the biggest pass catchers for this team. Rashid Shaheed, however, was traded away to the Seattle Seahawks. Who does that leave Tyler Shuck to throw to today? Yeah,
I mean, we've got Chris Olave, and he is a dynamic player, right? And he actually missed a game last year during the Atlanta Falcons, the game that was in New Orleans. He did not play that game. And so he still has somewhat of a limited resume, even though it's in division, because he missed a game. But then I think you look from Olave, you go to Johnson. Juwan Johnson, their tight end, has got 43 catches, 491 yards, 3 touchdowns this year. He has been effective for them. And then obviously you got Alvin Kamara. Now he's questionable for this game, but my guess is, and I haven't even seen the injury report for New Orleans yet, my guess is he's going to play because that's just what happens in these type of matchups. However, he is very similar in a respect to Bijan Robinson. He is dynamic and electric coming out of the backfield with the ball in his hands, but he is even as potent in the passing game, right? So they're going to find ways to get the ball in his hands. Oddly enough, Taylor, I look back at all the games that Alvin Kamara has played against the Atlanta Falcons, right? His entire career has been with the New Orleans Saints. 15 games. He's got 4 rush touchdowns and 0 receiving touchdowns. That actually kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I figured that he would have had more statistics, like more touchdowns, and made Atlanta pay more in his career. But kudos to the Atlanta Falcons. They've kind of been able to cage him up a little bit in these rivalry matchups. Guess what? That got to happen again today.
Right. Well, I think, too, what you're mentioning of, like, the lack thereof of the touchdowns, because I think we would all think it would be much higher against the Falcons, right? I think they've got a little bit of a Swiss Army knife over there in New Orleans that they use in the red zone a little bit more. Talk to me about him really fast. Yeah, I mean, Taysom Hill is the guy that is, he presents a problem, but a completely different problem, right? I mean, this is the guy that was the former college quarterback that's come in, that has played running back, that's played tight end, he's played H-back, he's played quarterback, you name it. Like, he does anything that this team needs for him. I think that's the reason why he's had such longevity, is because he'll do whatever you ask him, and when he does it at a high level, right? So you think about short yardage goal line, they put the ball in his hands, and he's like another Josh Allen type body that wants contact. He's not shying away from it. They feel confident giving the football to him out in the passing game if he needs to be. So he's that guy where certain situations, like you see him come on the field, the light bulb has to come on that he might be a decoy,
but he sure might be getting the football, and we got to get him down on the ground. You got to bring all your technique with him too.
Yeah, he can put a
He's
lot
strong.
of damage on the field. Yeah, he's fun to watch when you're not playing him. If your team is not playing him, he is fun to watch. But you mentioned that Alvin Kamara coming into this game is questionable to play, but we do have the inactives for you guys right now for both the Saints and the Falcons. It looks like Alvin Kamara is going to play. I do think since I have been with the Falcons that he has been questionable to play
almost every
game,
time.
and he always plays. Like doesn't matter if he's questionable or not, he's going to play, especially in this game. As you can see, we already talked about them. Drake London, Casey Washington will not play. Nathan Carter will also be inactive today for the Falcons. But something else I wanted to mention was Matthew Bergeron and Chris Lindstrom were both questionable coming into this game. They will be active. That is a huge get for Kirk Cousins and the rest of this offense today.
Yeah, I mean, not to take anything away from guys like Kyle Hinton that have been filling in admirably, but when you get Matthew Bergeron back, and this is a game where you feel like you have got to be able to lean on your offensive line. So getting Berge back and having Lindstrom in the lineup, I think is huge boost for them offensively, because they've got to be able to run the football in whatever fashion it is. And if, yes, everybody wants to see Bijan Robinson, but if it's Tyler Algier, he ends up with 12 carries for 65 yards, and then Robinson does what he does, that's a good thing. But this game, to me, starts and stops up front offensively for Atlanta. Can they move the ball in the run game? And when they do pass, can this offensive line keep the pressure away from Kirk Cousins, give him time and give him room to be able to step into his passes and make some plays downfield?
You're kind of already talking in the cadence that you do when we talk about keys to the game. So let's just go ahead and get to it. Time
so we're
now
going there.
for the keys to the game presented by Wells Fargo. You've got 3. I've got my preference. Go ahead with your first.
I've got 3, yes. I'm going to start with my first one, which is starting fast. I just feel like this is a game when you're going on the road in a rivalry matchup and you're thinking they don't have Michael Penix Jr., they don't have Drake London. Defensive guys, Billy Bowman's out, Zach Harrison's out. Like, let's get off to a fast start. Put points on the board right away, right? If you're on offense. If it's defense, get that 3 and out right away. Get a interception. Get a strip sack that gives the offense a short field in a rivalry matchup. Because here's what happens in this game, Taylor. You end up getting behind, and you're playing in New Orleans, and that crowd gets hyped. That place is loud. I'm telling you, I've played there. I've played 6 games there, right? In my 6 years with the Atlanta Falcons. That place gets loud, and the best way to calm it down is to score points, have effectiveness on offense, and create chaos on defense, right? If they can do this right from the jump, I think it gives them a lot of confidence, and then the rest of the players that are on the sideline don't have this, oh, here we go again, like we're gonna have to play from behind, and we're gonna get one-dimensional on offense, right? All that goes out the door if you get off to a fast start.
Something that's been really interesting in some of these press conferences that Raheem Morris has been, and they have asked him, you know, you as an offense have elected to receive the ball early in this game, first quarter or first half of this game. Why is that? Because most teams elect to defer to the second half, excuse me. And he said, because we want to start fast, that's the goal. We want to get points on the board first, because it's a whole lot easier to keep momentum going when you're starting out on top than to start behind and try to get the win. So if we can start fast and we can get points on the board in our first drive that is scripted, that we kind of want to see what their defense is going to put out every Sunday, or that Sunday in particular, we're going to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Falcons elect to receive, if they do win the toss today, and if they can start fast. Second key to the game today.
I think you mentioned a second ago about momentum.
Yes.
Did you not?
I think so.
How about some momentum plays in this game, right? Explosive plays, right? Maybe it's a quick slant route where Kyle Pitts or Darnell Mooney breaks a tackle and they turn a 7-yard gain into a 47-yard gain. Or Bijan Robinson makes somebody miss, like we've seen so often throughout the course of this year. How about a tipped pass on defense that turns into an interception? How about the strip sack that I just talked about? Dare I say a big special teams return or score on that third phase of the game? Momentum plays, I think, will be huge in this one, whether it's offensively, defensively, or on special teams. I think they got to find some momentum early.
You mentioned special teams, and I've actually been really waiting and excitedly waiting for Agnew to kind of break out into the kick return, punt returner that he has been known to be in this league. And last week, you kind of saw it a little bit. I think he had a 46-yard return last week against the Carolina Panthers. I would like to see those bigger chunk returns that we've been hearing about him a lot before the season started.
Yeah, absolutely. Field position is really the name of the game. If you could find ways to shrink the field down, that is a huge advantage.
Yeah, all right, third and final key to the game.
All right, it is going to be clean, disciplined football. And I say this for a couple of reasons. Number one, Playing on the road in a hostile environment, you cannot afford to be playing behind the chains, especially on offense, right? So this is false starts. This is holding penalties that's setting you back to 1st and 15, 1st and 20, 2nd and 20 is going to be extremely difficult. But also in a rivalry matchup, what happens a lot, right? Chirping, trash talking afterwards, pushing and shoving after a play. Like, you got to play with passion, you got to play with an edge, you got to play with a chip on your shoulder, but you got to know when to draw the line, right? And when too much is too much, as far as a flag coming out that's going to cost 15 yards, not only the field position, but maybe it's giving them a free first down, or we had a first down, now we get backed up and it's 3rd and 7, whatever the case may be. So clean, disciplined football, everybody on the same page, play with that passion and energy, but don't get any of those silly penalties.
Yeah, I actually went back and looked when you sent in your keys about, I went back to look at all the penalties that the Falcons have got the last 5 weeks, so the last 5 losses for this team. And they, all except for one, and I will get to that in a second, they have out-penaltied the other team. They've had more penalties than the other team has, which in the last 5 weeks, they've had 28 penalties, which is worth 238 yards. That's a lot of yardage that you're giving up for making either pre-snap penalties or making some mistakes in terms of chirpage. Yep. The only game that they had less penalties than the opposing team was Indy, and that was when, of course, Jonathan Taylor had a career day, and that was kind of a different story. But you mentioned the penalties. It's necessary to make sure that you're playing clean, disciplined football. I'm going to go ahead and say my preference really quickly, because part of that clean, disciplined football is playing clean, disciplined football against Alvin Kamara. You've got to stop the run against Alvin Kamara. We didn't really get into it too in depth today about what Alvin Kamara will be able to do for Tyler Shuck today as a rookie quarterback. But as we mentioned earlier, Rashid Shaheed, he left the Saints and he went to the Seattle Seahawks. In the weeks before, Alvin Kamara averaged 11 rushing attempts entering week 10, which was about 41 yards per game in those. Week 10, which was the game that they had before he left, thank you, or the game after he left, he had 22 attempts, 83 yards. So it will be imperative to stop Alvin Kamara today. We need to wrap up. So thank you guys for joining us for the Falcons pregame show presented by Ticketmaster. We will see you next week as we take on the Jets. Bye, guys.